Is social media hurting teens' mental health? Let's talk about it. Of course, before we begin, I have varying thoughts on social media. Social media can be good, it can be bad, it can be ugly, it can be beautiful. It's a tool, it's a resource, but social media can have a huge negative effect on teens. And so the US Surgeon General did this whole interview with Common Sense Media, and I thought it would be really interesting for us to watch it together. So let's watch it after the intro. Okay, see you soon. Welcome to the Protect Kids Online live stream. I'm CyberFareedah. I have a background in cybersecurity awareness, threat intelligence, online gaming, and other nerdy stuff. I've taken my gaming experiences and professional background to help parents like you protect their children online. I'm known as an award-winning Forbes 30 Under 30 internet safety expert, and I've been in some places on the internet and beyond that you may recognize. So, without further ado, let's talk. 3, 2, 1. All right, so let's watch the video together. I love watching, okay, let me do this. I love watching things with you and seeing what you believe in your comment and your experience and that whole thing. So we're gonna watch it together, and then every now and then I'm gonna pause the video and I'm gonna talk about my experiences from cybersecurity awareness, threat intelligence, someone who's been in online gaming and who's been on social media as a content creator, the whole 9 yards. So it'll be very interesting. Let's watch it together. Let me press play.
Hi, I'm Jim Steyer. I'm the founder and CEO of Common Sense Media, and we're here today for a very important conversation about one of the most important issues facing our nation, and that is the youth mental health crisis that is shaping the lives of so many children and families here in our country. And our guest today is Dr. Byyyeee Murthy, the Surgeon General of the United States, who is probably the most articulate and thoughtful expert on issues related to youth mental health in this country. He's spoken to audiences all across the country, and his words of wisdom are incredibly important for all of us, whether we're parents, educators, community members, or young people ourselves. So welcome, Dr. Murthy.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Me too. So
there's a whole suit on and everything.
How you first got interested, both as Surgeon General, but also as a parent, in the issues of mental health in the United States, and particularly the youth mental health crisis that we're experiencing today. And why do you feel it is of such concern to communities all across the country?
Well, Jim, as a young person, I struggled a lot with my own mental health. You wouldn't have put it in those terms when I was young.
No,
so
you would
really
never
think about mental health. And
let me see if I can turn up the volume, because the volume is super low on my end. So I'm turning it up. Okay.
A combination of loneliness and anxiety.
Yeah, that's way better.
In retrospect, probably some depression as well.
Yeah, you never
think
really
know how to think about it, much less how to talk to someone else about it. And then I felt this profound sense of shame around it and embarrassment. I know, fast forward many years, and I realized many of the kids I was growing up with in school were also feeling something similar, but we didn't know that at the time.
No.
So that was certainly in the back of my head. And when I served as Surgeon General during the Obama administration, I had the privilege of going around the country and talking to people in communities across America, and parents across the board were telling me that they were worried about the mental health of their kids, and they were confused, for example, about what they were supposed to do. They didn't understand a lot about the technology their kids were growing up with, but they knew that and could sense that it was having an impact on their kids' mental health.
It is.
And so this was coming up in conversation after conversation. And as I dug into the data around it, I came to see that this mental health crisis we have among youth has been building and accelerating for a number of years now, even prior to the pandemic, where in the decade, in fact, prior to COVID, we had a 57% increase in the suicide rate among young people. We now have about half of young people who are saying they feel persistently sad or hopeless. One way to think about it is like this. If you had a high school with 1,000 kids in it, right now in America, 450 of those children are saying that they feel persistently sad or hopeless. 200 of those children
I don't know
thought about taking
if he's gonna give resources, but I'll give resources as we're having the discussion, because I have a couple of resources if you feel like your child is struggling with mental health.
And 100 of those kids have actually attempted suicide. This is the state of mental health when it comes to kids in America right now. And that's why when I had the privilege of coming back to serve as Surgeon General again, I made mental health and well-being my top priority. And last year in December 2021, we issued a youth mental health advisory to call the nation to attention, because this is a crisis. But there's the good news is there's a lot we can do about it.
Well,
to expand access to treatment, invest in prevention.
For every problem, there is a solution.
Fundamentally change the conversation so that no young person ever has to feel ashamed for needing help.
So I'm the father of 4, and listening to you, I'm actually thinking of my own children, all of whom are in the age range. And I would agree that in one way or the other, even though they've been very privileged in their upbringing, have gone to great school, et cetera, they've all wrestled with mental health issues as well. And I
It's very
say to them,
normal.
we're in a crisis state. And when we travel around the country like you do, people refer to it as a crisis. When you do, let's talk a little more about what we're seeing before we get into the solutions. What would you describe as the most visible manifestations of the mental health crisis that young people are facing in this country?
That's a good question. And I think of it this way. Our mental health is the fuel that allows us to show up in life, to show up in school, at work, for our friends and family, and in our communities. When we struggle with our mental health, it affects all of those areas, right? So it affects how we interact with our family and friends. We may get more withdrawn. Some people react to mental health struggles by being quiet and withdrawing. Others react differently by
That's
lashing
true.
out,
Yeah.
or getting angry or being short-tempered. So we're all a little bit different in that regard. But we also have seen that when young people struggle with their mental health, it can impact their performance in school.
Hey,
And
Dr.
it can
Patrice,
impact how
welcome.
they perform in the workplace. If they're a young adult and they're already in the workplace, it can impact their productivity negatively. And so one key thing.
Speaking of which, I did a live stream with Dr. Patrice, and we talked about protecting your child's mental health on social media. And I will leave a link to that as he's discussing the mental health issues. And I also leave a link for you to find a therapist to work with your child on helping them through anxiety and depression and self-harm and that type of those issues that they may be having. So I'm going to leave a link to it. I'll talk about it later on as he's having this discussion, but it's never a lost hope if you find your child disconnecting from you or in their environment, or engaging a lot on social media to the point where they're trying to escape their life. And so if you feel that that's happening, and maybe because I'm talking about it now, I'll just continue to talk about it and I'll send you the link in the chat. And then we can continue on with the discussion that he's having, because I don't like to lose my train of thought. And I have been known on these live streams to lose my train of thought. Okay. So, but yeah, absolutely amazing conversation. We had one. So Dr. Patrice Byyyeee is a psychologist. She's a licensed psychologist. So I highly recommend you check out what she does as well. And we had a conversation about this. And there's something called rapid transformational therapy. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with it. If you are, feel free to let me know. And if you feel like your child is struggling with something, they work with parents, they work with kids, they work with anyone. But I highly recommend this mode of therapy. And this is like, look, I'm not a therapist. I'm not giving mental health advice. I'm just giving you a resource to help you if you have a child that's struggling with something. This type of therapy is very interesting because it goes into your child's subconscious mind in terms of working with them to understand what is the underlying reason in terms of the depression, the self-harm, or whatever is happening mentally with them, and working with them to help them develop new understanding of their life, but also with the help of someone who's licensed in this, who's a therapist in that. So Dr. Patrice Byyyeee says that Harvard has a new initiative to help kids and adults thrive online. Dr. Patrice Byyyeee, please let me know the name of that. It's not the empathy program or so. I saw there was like this program that Harvard has to help your kids identify their emotions. Is it that program, or is it completely different? Because anyways, Harvard's doing freaking amazing things. They're also helping. There's this guy that I met with who's working with Harvard to create some amazing things to help you protect your child's smartphone. Not a app, but like a contract or just something to get your kids used to the responsibility and developing an understanding of what to do when they have smartphones. I'm going to leave the RTT link over here. You can learn a little bit more about RTT and what it is and how it can help you, and finding a therapist for your child, whether in person or offline as well. I went to RTT therapy. There's many modalities of therapy. Dr. Patrice Byyyeee can talk about more about that. Go to her channel for that. There's like CBTs, like cognitive behavioral therapy. There's like so many different types of therapy, but RTT is the one that I really, really enjoyed. There's EDM. There's so many different types. So I highly recommend that you look at that for your child. And it's not just more about counseling, but it's also getting to what's actually happening in the root of the problem and helping them develop the tools to thrive for the rest of their life, which is why I like RTT, because it gives your child the tools to thrive even after the therapy session. So it's not just talking to your child, but it's helping them through the emotions that they're having. So I'm putting that there. And then we'll continue with this video, but I wanted to put that resource in case I forgot, because I probably will forget. So let's keep going.
Thing to know is that the effects of poor mental health are widespread, but they're also very different, which is why it's so important for us to tell parents and others that, and to tell young people that you can't just look at somebody and know how they're doing in terms of their mental health. In part because we've all become experts in putting on a facade and making it seem like everything's going great. We especially do that on social media. So you especially can't tell when you look at someone's social media feed how they're actually doing, which is why it's so important for us to actually check on one another, because don't assume that just because someone has happy posts, online, that somehow everything is going well in their life. When you peel back the curtain, most people are struggling in some way, shape, or form. Finally, I'll just say this. If you're a parent out there and you're thinking, how do I know if my kid is struggling? Like, what signs should I look for? Recognizing the diversity of signs, what I would look for are changes in patterns. Is your child not sleeping well, whereas before they were sleeping soundly? Have their eating patterns changed? Have they been reluctant or less likely to hang out with friends or with family members? Are they becoming more withdrawn? Has there been a reluctance on their part to participate in activities that used to give them joy, like hobbies or sports? And has their academic performance suffered? Because that can be a sign as well. Any changes like that mean that it's important to pause, to have a conversation with your child, to reach out for help from others if you need to, like your child's doctor or counselor in school.
And you said that almost basically,
like I said, I would go beyond the doctor and counselor. I think that's a great first step for your child, but I firmly believe that you want to reach out to a therapist, an independent therapist from the school, from your doctor, someone who's worked with teens and understands what they're going through and can talk to them through that and give them the tools. So again, I put the RTT link in the comments below. You can research RTT, see if you're comfortable with it for your family. I highly recommend it. I've talked to so many parents who their kids went through that type of program and it really worked for them. So I highly recommend it. I rest my case. Dr. Patrice Berry said she came from Boston with the Harvard Thrive, their Project Zero, the Center for Digital Thriving is their new program there. So I'll find the link and I will send you the link here. Dr. Patrice says, totally agree. One who also knows about social media. Exactly. Dr. Patrice, don't you take clients virtually? Like, do you do that? Can you let us know in the comments? Because if you do, like, feel free to put your link there as well, because you're a great resource too. So please, 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 I highly recommend go outside of your doctor and outside of the school counselor, and go to somebody who specializes in that. And you can have multiple people. You can have like an internet safety expert, me, a psychologist like Dr. Patrice Berry. You can have, like, there's so many different avenues that you can go to. Research the one that's best for you and use that.
50% of all young people today in the United States are experiencing some form of anxiety, depression, really, really heavy level of stress, correct?
Yeah, so the studies that show around 50% of high school students, close to it, about 44% specifically, are feeling persistently sad or hopeless.
Okay.
That's a lot.
And look, this is at a time where we hope that high school, even though it's not easy, we hope it's a time where people are feeling optimistic about the future. They're looking forward to the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And if nearly half of students are telling us they're not feeling that way, that's deeply, deeply concerning.
Deeply concerning. Let me ask you a question about the pandemic, because I remember you and I were having conversations about this pre-COVID-19 and pre your returning as the Surgeon General of the United States. How do you think the pandemic impacted the youth mental health crisis in the United States?
Well, I think the pandemic did several things when it came to youth mental health. One is it increased the number of stressors on young people. For young people, routine is very important. In fact, I would say for most of us, routine is important. Many young people in the beginning of the pandemic were not able to go to school. They had to figure out how to learn virtually. They also were living in homes where their parents were under great stress. Many people lost their jobs or were worried about their jobs in the early days of the pandemic. There was economic uncertainty. People weren't sure how they were going to put food on the table. Many kids relied on school for food because food insecurity is a very common challenge in America right now. And without being able to go to school, the number of food insecure families actually increased. So you've got a circumstance where there's a lot of disruption to the stability that many children had in their lives.
It's always more
And
than
that stress,
technology.
adversely
Always.
impacted the mental health of young people.
Yes.
Compound that with the fact that
You're staying
during times of
inside.
stress, what do most of us typically do? We reach out to people in our
Connection.
life, right? We try to see a friend, spend time with a family member. In the early days of COVID in particular, that was a time you could not do that, right? Not
So
just
they
because
reach
you
out
weren't
to
in school,
online
but because
friends.
getting together with other
Discord,
people posed a
Snapchat,
risk of
Instagram,
transmission.
TikTok.
So it was a double hit, for young people when it came to their mental health. One bright side of it, if we have to find is I do think it's important to try to find silver linings in tragedies. One silver lining is that I do think it has pulled back the curtain on the struggles that many young people have.
Agree.
In a way that just did not exist before. Many people just
another silver lining is that it allowed people to connect in a way that we never connected before. So think of TikTok and the community that has been built on TikTok, apps that came out from the pandemic like Clubhouse, the resurgence of Discord used by many people outside of the gaming community. Most likely you know what Discord is because your kids are using Discord. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, go ask your teen or your kid, what is Discord? What's going on? What's happening? Most likely 8 times out of 10, they're going to know what Discord is. And those apps created a sense of community for so many people, adults and kids and teens alike, all at the same time. Of course, the bad side of it was because everyone was online and teens were online and they're on these platforms. There was a surge of predatory behavior and online crimes against children. The FBI did like multiple alerts throughout the pandemic. I couldn't even keep up with all the alerts that were coming out. However, the good side of the connection was that they were able to connect with people from school, for their family, their friends. But the other side was that there was a huge mental health crisis, bigger than we've seen before.
Kids are fine. They're resilient. There's no problem. Every generation goes through its changes. This generation will get through their changes as well. But I think it helped many people understand that, hey, there's something different going on here. Young people they have a unique set of challenges that they're facing that prior generations did not have to deal with. I did not grow up with the challenge of navigating social media. I didn't grow up with the ubiquitous phone, that was always at my side, and which interfered with lots of things from conversation to sleep. I didn't grow up within an environment where there was a constant presence of media in my life, right? Where I was constantly getting information thrown at me 24/7. When I wanted to turn off the news when I was younger, I turned off the TV, right? How do you turn off information in this day and age? And if a lot of that information is negative, if it's focused on everything that's wrong with the world, then you're constantly having this negative input into your life. And so I do think that this story that young people are being told about the world now is a skewed and I think heavily negative story. And I think that the technology and other stressors that they're having to manage, they're unique, and there's no guidance manual that comes with this. Parents are asking for one. Kids are actually asking for one too. And this is, I think, very interesting, Jim, is that I find that young people have a remarkable amount of insight into what's actually happening with them.
We should
and
talk to them.
I find it actually helpful for me when I travel to just sit and listen.
Yeah,
a lot of times to what young people have to say. And they'll say, hey, look, I'm using technology all the time because everyone else is on it. I'm on social media because that seems to be where people are. So I feel I can't get off of it, but it doesn't make me feel good about myself. Constantly comparing myself to other people's best days and best versions of themselves online. But it also doesn't make me feel great about my friendships with other people. I think we're tight, and then I see everyone doing things without me, and it makes me feel left out. And so young people know that this is what's going on, but we cannot expect a young person today on their own to figure all of that out by themselves.
I mean, we barely, as adults, are figuring out our own mental health and what's going on and our own childhood trauma and our emotional wounds. I mean, most of us, you're turning 30, 40, 50 before you fully realize the impact that every tiny little thing, big, small, medium, that has happened in your life, the little t trauma and the capital trauma, the lowercase trauma, capital case trauma. I mean, so there's no way we can expect teens to understand this. And so that's why I'm so gung-ho about parents about community members understanding your own trauma and your own wounds and your own everything that happened in your own life, because then when your child is going through something, it's so much more easier. It's going to still be difficult, it's still going to be challenging, but it's much easier for you to hold space for them, to understand the resources you need for them, because you went through that and you figured out how you had to heal emotionally, how you had to heal your inner child, how you had to make space for yourself. So it's easier for you to make space for them, to listen to them, to understand their problems. So that is why, for the 1000th time, the parental controls are amazing and beautiful and awesome, great and awesome, great. Screen time controls, beautiful, great. But what's really most important, the foundation, is your work, your inner work with yourself. Like that matters the most. So Dr. Cheese says, have you read the book Behind Their Screens? No, I haven't. That sounds so familiar. I feel like I have it on my Amazon account, but now I'm going to make sure I have it. So Behind Their Screens, I'm going to take a picture of the chat after this. I'll remember, because if you said it, I remember. I'm going to check it out. The authors are part of the Digital Thriving Group. Oh, okay. Yes, I love it. And I love the title. It says, what teens are facing, what adults are missing. If anyone has read it, please let us know. And the chats, and if you're going to read it, let me know. Let me know what you think about it, because that'd be pretty cool. That'd be cool.
Why it's so important that we work together to help support young people through this. It's so important that we hold technology companies accountable to understanding the impact of these platforms on our youth. And it's why we've got to stay focused on this and recognize that until every child has the support and the help they need, until they no longer feel ashamed to ask for support when they need it, our job will not be done.
I agree.
We've talked a lot about social media over the years, and
Yes.
particularly the impact of social media on young people's lives, and particularly their mental health. Do you think it's the comparison and sort of performative nature of social media that's critical to the stressors and to the mental health challenges, or is it other stuff?
Well, if I think about the conversations I've had with young people, but also with researchers around the country who have dug deeply into this, I think it's several effects. Like, one is the accelerated culture of comparison that exists online. And even though you and I know that what people are posting isn't always an accurate representation of their life, photos are altered, people are also selecting the best experiences, posting the happy moments. Even though we know that, it still makes a lot of people feel worse about themselves. It's the experience of comparing your average days to other people's best days, and you always come up short in that regard. So I do think that culture of comparison is a huge factor here in eroding and chipping away at the self-esteem and sense of self that many young people need. But I think the other piece is just how ubiquitous a presence social media has in the lives of children, right? It's not like they're using it from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock every day, and then the rest of their time is free.
No.
It has infiltrated every part of their days, their evenings, even their nights, weekend time, vacation time. And what that means is that it also can compromise sleep. It can crowd out the time that you have in person with other people. It can distract you when you're actually in person having a conversation with somebody. Think about how many
there was I don't know, I have to find the study, but it was saying how the mere presence of a cell phone in a conversation, just like even if you're not on your cell phone, the fact that you can see someone's cell phone on the table just like that when you're at dinner or when you're talking to somebody or on the couch is already a distraction for the brain. And it was really, really interesting for me. I cannot back up this fact, so please take it with a grain of salt and research for your own if you want to. But I thought that was very fascinating, that just the fact that the phone was in the room present in terms of people can see it with their eye, it already created a distraction for people without it even being on or someone even using it. So yeah, that's a food for thought.
Times we pick up our phone, we check social media, we check our inbox, etc., in the middle of conversation. So what it has done is both crowded out and diluted many of our interactions and taken the time away from, practices like good sleep hygiene, which are an important part of our health and healing.
And when you talk to social media companies about this, which I do as well, what is the message that you want to deliver to the social media executives about their accountability and their role in not just creating some of the challenges, but also being part of the solution?
Well, I think when it comes to addressing the youth mental health crisis, we all have to ask ourselves, what can we do to help address this crisis? Policymakers have to do that, doctors and nurses, parents, community members. But that includes technology companies too. And
I just want to pause to give like the genius of his answer right there. Clearly, he's he knows his psychology right there, because if you notice, he answered the question in the most diplomatic way possible that creates the best impacts for everyone involved. It's not the parents' fault. It's not social media's fault. It's not the teens' fault. It's not the school's fault. Every single person involved in this conversation has the 100% responsibility. Educators, teachers, parents, social media companies, tech companies, policymakers, all of us have a 100% responsibility to do the best of our ability to create some type of impact and change in the way that we have the power to protect kids online and to protect their mental health and help them develop healthy habits that go with them throughout their lives. So it's not about putting the onus on one person. It's a village, and we all have to do our part.
It's not okay to develop a platform, put it out there, and just say, well, it's up to people how they use them, whether it has good effects or bad effects. That's not, our department. It's not our responsibility. We all, I think, have to take responsibility here in a moment like this and ask ourselves, are there things that we are doing? Are there products we are building, services we are providing
Correct.
that are helping or hurting young people when it comes to their mental health?
Exactly.
And if we don't know the answer to that, we've got to figure it out with actual data. And what I think that we really need to do when it comes to social media platforms in particular is, number one, we've got to ensure that there is data transparency.
Mm-hmm.
We would never take a medicine and put it out into the world and tell children to use it without data on the benefits and the harms.
Well,
right? Yet somehow it seems that we have this grand national experiment that has been taking place. It's really
we don't know
global
how it
experiment
happened
with social media. And yet, where's the data helping us understand how it's impacting the mental health of kids, which kids in particular are most at risk, what kind of uses of social media are most hazardous to their health and well-being.
Yeah.
We need to be able to see that data. Independent researchers tell me all the time that they can't access this data from the companies in the quality and quantity that they need to draw conclusions. That is something I think companies do. But there's one other piece to this, which is around safety standards.
Correct.
When I think about, the home that I live in, most of the products I have in my home had to meet some sort of safety standard before they were put out onto the market, before I was able to purchase them. Most of the items in my kitchen, in my living room, and this is true for most people. Yet how is it the case that we have allowed children and all people really, not just kids, to use these platforms, which occupy so much of our lives, without a real set of safety standards to govern their use, to help people make decisions? You see, the thing is, I think people should have the ability to make decisions in terms of how they spend their time, what they want to do.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But I also believe people deserve the information, accurate information,
informed
about the benefits and harms, so that they can make good decisions for themselves and for their children. And what parents continue to tell me around the country is that they just don't have that information.
Exactly.
And they want to know why.
It's not accessible.
That's the case.
It's not
and
readable.
So this is where I think both data transparency, safety standards, these are really important to have in place to ensure that social media is a tool that does not adversely affect the mental health of young people. And I worry that for many young people, it is taking a toll on their mental health.
I'm so happy we saw this. They have three parts, which is very I'm very happy about, because it's important. I'm supposed to do all 3 parts tonight. I wasn't going to do 3 parts tonight. I was like, I'll do it one by one.
But big campaign in
all
schools
together.
all across the United States.
Oh, okay.
To talk specifically with young people, but also their teachers and their counselors about the youth mental health crisis. So
it's very good.
The first question I have in that regard is, what would be the basic message we should be sharing with young people today about this?
Well, when it comes to mental health, a couple of key things for young people to know. Number one is that if you are struggling with your mental health, you are not alone. Many people do struggle with their mental health. It is part of the human experience.
Correct.
And so that's critical, because I think feeling alone
can make
it go a whole lot worse. The second thing to know is that there is help available. We now have more and more schools that have school counselors. This is something that we worked very hard in the beginning of the Biden administration to fund, because we knew that not enough schools had the counseling services available. But we also want people to know that there is a crisis line now, 988, which is available. So if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can dial 988, you can text 988, and you can get access to a trained counselor who can provide you with support in the moment and help you figure out local resources that you can connect to. This is an important development as well.
It's very
But I
important.
think the third thing that's really important for young people to know is that we need to all be there to support one another when it comes to our mental health and well-being. And you don't need a medical degree or a nursing degree in order to be able to help somebody else who's struggling.
Correct.
You just need to be somebody who's willing to reach out and ask them how they're doing, who's willing to listen to how they are, and who's willing to be there with them as a source of support. It's not about having all the answers. It's not about fixing people's problems.
No.
But simply when you show up and ask somebody how they're doing, what you're telling them is, I see you. You matter.
You matter. Yeah.
And I'm there for you.
Yes.
Even when you're struggling.
Correct.
And so that's something each and all of us can do. And I think it's what we're called to do right now at a time where really record numbers of people are struggling with their mental health.
So
it's interesting because he said the 3 things is kind of similar to the RTT therapy that I just put. And I also put another link so that you can check it out for you and your children. But one of the principles of the RTT therapy is helping people, helping your child understand the 3 things that typically go on in your mind when you're struggling with your mental health. It's 1, that you are not enough, some way, shape, or form. The belief is I'm not enough. The second is I am too different from other people. And the third is it is not available to me. And so many times people struggle with 1 or 3 of these underlying thoughts that go through their brain. And so the RTT therapy is helping understand and unpack that, but then also heal those wounds that developed those thoughts of I'm not enough, I'm too different, these things are not available to me. And so I highly recommend you check out the blog post that I posted down there. It's RTT therapy for teens and children, and just an introduction to RTT and what I'm talking about right now, because it is very important to provide that safe space to let your kids know that you are enough, that you are amazing and beautiful, unique human being. You're not too different than anyone else. You're just a human being with flaws and just perfectly imperfect. And the third one is that anything that you want is available to you.
It's very important then,
even if it's challenging to get it,
people
you
that
can
it's
do it.
okay not to be okay.
Exactly.
And to be honest about how you're feeling, and that you're not alone. What do you think the messages are that we should be giving to teachers and educators across the country about youth mental health? How can they be part of the solution?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked, because teachers play such a vital role, obviously, in the development of kids, including with their mental health. But I do worry that we ask teachers to do so much beyond what they're often supported to do,
overworked,
sometimes trained
underpaid,
to do, and certainly have the time to do.
Yes.
But we know that when teachers, for example, are overburdened, when they struggle, that will have an impact on children naturally, because it's just how it is. In the similar way to when a parent is stressed and overburdened at home, that can have an impact on their children, because children pick up on this. But I do think what we have to provide teachers with is, number 1, training in mental health, so they understand what are the signs that you should look for to know if your child is struggling, to know what resources are available to help direct a child so they can get the help and support they need, and also to understand how they can talk about mental health in a way that can be destigmatizing, that can help bring people in and help young people recognize that, hey, this is not something that's wrong with me necessarily, or a fundamental flaw that I have if I'm struggling. One last thing we've got to do for teachers is to make more resources in terms of mental health supports available.
For the links
them.
For the videos
it's
we're
one
watching.
thing to have a mental health provider in your community. It's another thing to have that provider and that help right there in the school, right? And we know that in some ways I think about mental health like the gym. The closer it is to you, the more likely you are to use it, right?
Yeah.
And with mental health, we now are in a position where we can use technology to bring virtual counseling services to people where they are, as opposed to expecting them to wait 2 or 3 months and drive 30 miles to see somebody in person.
30 miles.
There's still a role for in-person care.
30 miles.
But one of the silver linings of the pandemic is it actually pushed us to accelerate the use of telemedicine, of providing counseling services and other services virtually. And a lot of people benefited from that.
Yes.
And so we've got to make sure that those services are available to people. We've got to allow those services to be provided across state lines, which is one of the big efforts we're pushing for right now. But these are ways in which we can better support teachers and allow them to better support young people when it comes to their mental health and well-being.
And a final question about teachers. So again, most teachers, including myself, are not trained as mental health experts, but it's pretty much of a common sense approach to this. Is that a fair way to say it? That teachers to both recognize that they may be dealing with their own challenges, but that
it's a part of
very
common
simple,
health,
common sense way you can
common
speak to your class individually, but collectively also.
But there are
these
techniques.
Issues. Do you think that a teacher can speak to the group of their class about these issues?
I do think that there are powerful messages that teachers can share with their kids. There are
He's being good.
conversations that they can open up with their children around mental health. And again, you don't have to be a mental health expert to be able to do this, but part of that power comes from the fact that teachers are incredibly important figures. They're role models for many kids. They shape the experience that our children have in schools day to day.
He's media
And when
trained.
they
Okay.
speak up
Media
about an
trained.
issue like mental health, it makes a difference. The words that they use make a difference.
Yes.
The experiences that they choose to even share
Yes.
about their own childhood, about the experiences that they've seen, over the course of their life with mental health, that makes a big difference too. And it makes a difference not just to the kids, it honestly makes a difference to parents too.
Yes.
And this is a place where I do think that schools being able to bring parents into this conversation around mental health is so important, because after school, kids go home.
Exactly.
And many times, kids have parents who love them dearly and care about them and want the best for them, but didn't necessarily grow up knowing how to talk about mental health.
Right.
They may have their own struggles with mental health, and they may feel ashamed about that. They may have all kinds of, sort of tools and support that they need to figure out how to talk about mental health. So if we really,
which is why you always start with yourself first, because what you do for you, your own healing impacts your kids always, every time, forever and ever.
want to help kids,
always.
We have to think about the environment they're in. They're in school, they're at home, they're in the community.
And there's been many research studies to say that when the parents go to therapy, the behavior of the child and the things that they're struggling with has an astronomical effect, essentially, on the mental health of the child and what they go through in their behavior. So I highly recommend that you do it. It's not because it's your fault. It's just that you're the leader. You're the one that goes the way, and then your kids will follow unconsciously and consciously. So it's really important for you to do so. And the research study also said they did two test groups. One where only the kids went to therapy and they met with counselors and they did the whole 9 yards. And then one where only the parents went to therapy. And significant changes were made, positive changes, when the parents were the one that went to therapy. It impacted the children in ways that they didn't even understand. And so if I could find the research study, I will post about it and I'll make a whole video about it. But you can go research it for yourself. But it is very important to start with yourself first.
The more we can make sure that the people around them, in particular their teachers and their parents, know how to talk about mental health, know how to be supportive when their kid may be struggling, know how to look for the signs that children may be having a tough time, the better off our children will ultimately be.
So there's a big homeschool connection here. This is really something that, and that affects you all day long. So you've talked a lot about the solutions regarding parents. Are there sort of one or two basic things that all parents should know about this?
Well, I think for parents, one of the most important things you can do is to start a conversation with your child about mental health. It doesn't mean you got to know everything to say, but even just asking your child how they're doing, even talk to them about mental health, even about your own experiences,
or even like what the content that they're consuming online. So I said there's like a Marie Kondo approach that you can take with your kids when it comes to who they're following. So they can go through their following list and say, does this spark joy? Do I like this person appearing on my feed? If they don't like the person appearing, or every time their video comes up, they don't like it, or they're only following that person because their friend that really likes them, or they liked a video a while back, but they don't really know why they follow them anymore, they can unfollow that person. And if for whatever reason they feel like, you know what, I don't want to unfollow this, Dominique, yes, the live will absolutely stay up. I always have the replay. So as soon as this live is done, the replay will be up forever. I will not take it down unless I have to take it down for like copyright reasons. I don't know. I don't think anyone take it down. But they could take like a Marie Kondo approach. And if your child is following someone from school, this is namely on Instagram, but if they're following someone from school or their family member and they don't like seeing their posts, or their post triggers something in them, meaning it makes them feel uncomfortable, makes them feel sad, it makes them feel frustrated, then they can just mute the post and they do not have to see their posts anymore. Or they can click not interested. I don't want to see these videos anymore. So while you don't need to be tech savvy to protect your kids online, it is important to let your kids know that they have control over what they see online as much as humanly possible. Of course, there are certain things they can't control, like what their friends send them, but allowing them to realize, okay, every year in the spring, we're going to do a spring cleaning as a family all together. They're not the ones pointed out like, oh, this Snapchat is the reason why you have mental health problems, or TikTok is the reason why you're depressed. No, it's all of us sitting down as a family, and we're all going to go through all of our social media accounts. It's my pleasure, Dominique. Thank you for being here. We're going to go through all of our social media accounts, and we're going to look through what is something that is not sparking joy. What is something that is not important, not important in my life right now? And then talk to your kids about what hobbies do they actually like. Cheryl, so happy, that is great. Thanks for being here. What sparks joy in their personal life? So do they like sewing? Do they like cooking? Do they like gaming? Do they like art? Do they like crafts? Do they like horseback riding? Do they like reading? Do they like music? What do they like? And all of those things, come up with a list as a family, and then you all will all go together and find accounts online that meet what they like, so that their feed is full with all of the beautiful things they want. Maybe they don't even know that they like something. So let's just say they want to travel to, let's just say they're like a nerd, or they're not a nerd. I grew up as a nerd, like a geek, okay? And I love anime, right? And anime is like something that's really, I grew up on it. I watch it. I haven't been watched it for years now, but I'll go back to it, right? So let's just say that they want to go to like a concert or a particular place, or let's say they want to go to Japan and they want to meet like their favorite animator that animated one of the animes that they love. So have them follow that, the town that they want to go to online. If they really want horseback riding, but they've never been horseback riding, follow an account that has horses. Like, just allow them to understand that they are in control of technology and they can add things to their feed that is more important to them and allows them to have a more joyous time online. So they can see funny videos, whatever it is. Just allow them to understand that they got control over it. I suggest doing this like once a year, maybe during the summertime, during spring, maybe even during winter break, where you sit down, exactly, right? We sit down and you talk about these things together. Another way to make sure that social media is a source of joy and not something that is hurting your child's mental health is to watch social media videos together. So if you see a TikTok or you see an Instagram video or you see something on YouTube and you're on these platforms, I know you're on YouTube because you're here right now, and you like a video and you think, oh my God, he's going to like this. She's going to like this. They're going to like this. So you can save that video and watch it together. So if your child is not on social media, that's a way that they can live through you and have a moment through you. And they don't have to be on TikTok. They can just watch the TikTok videos you send them, but also it can be a way for your family to connect over social media. So social media does not become the bad guy, does not become the, we don't talk about social media, but my mom absolutely hates it, so I can't talk to my mom about that. It becomes something that's open, that's normal, that you can talk about anything. And if they're having any challenges, they know that they can come to you without fearing that you're going to take their social media away because they're having a bad day or they didn't like something on it. So that's very important.
Can be profoundly important, because what does that do? It tells your child it's okay to talk about these things. It also tells your child that you're somebody they can come to if they're having a tough time. So even if your child says nothing during that conversation, there's still an important value to having that.
Agreed.
The second thing that you can do is you can make sure that you're supporting your children in building healthy relationships in their life, making sure they have time to spend with family, making sure that they've got time with friends.
Yes.
Also encouraging them and ensuring that they have some time in person with these people in their lives.
So that list that we just talked about in terms of the things they love, the hobbies that they want to do or already love, use that list to also build offline activities that they can do when they're not on social media on their downtime.
It's just solely time online, because we know that relationships are protective when it comes to our mental health, and the stronger our relationships are, the more likely we are to do well in terms of our mental health. So these are a couple of simple things that parents can do. But I'll leave you with this. And I say this as a parent myself of two small children, and where I'm constantly thinking about what can I do to support them in their mental health and well-being. And sometimes, look, as a dad, sometimes I feel worried and lost as well. Like, I think about the fact that my kids are going to be using technology and social media someday, and I worry. I don't always know like how best to protect my kids. But here's one thing I want to remind every parent: the love you provide your child, the unconditional love that you make sure they know they have from you, that is worth so much.
Yes.
Because, and I say this again, not just as an emotional statement, but the data very clearly tells us that when children have secure attachments in their life, when they have people that they can depend on, people who they know are going to be there for them, who love them unconditionally, that is one of the most powerful forces in ensuring that our kids are not only mentally well, but they have good physical health in the future, that they have better outcomes in terms of graduation rates, in terms of their likelihood of staying healthy and safe and not running into trouble in terms of violence in communities and running into trouble in the criminal justice system. All of these outcomes are better when children have strong, healthy relationships in their life. And as a parent, you are one of the most important relationships that they have. And so even, if you feel like you're lost as a parent, you're not sure all the right things to do, if you can make sure your child knows that you love them and you're there for them, it's one of the most powerful things you can do to help protect and support your child.
10,000 times agree with that. 100% agree with that. Here's the last video of the series. And remember, that's why you want to be careful about how you approach internet safety and social media, and reminding them that their devices aren't just going to be taken away because they have a bad time on social media or something happened to them, because you want them to be able to talk to you like no matter what.
Now,
So this is the last
the youth
video.
mental health crisis cuts across all socioeconomic, racial,
I'm so happy they
gender
did
lines.
this.
But are there particular stressors on low-income families and on low-income communities when it comes to mental health?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you asked, Jim, because families who have been traditionally marginalized, right? Communities of color, communities who, families who tend to be on the lower end of socioeconomic spectrum and don't make as much money, they have additional stressors that certain other families don't have to deal with. We know that economic stressors at home do impact children, right? Like we know that when parents are stressed because they're worried about losing their job,
it also impacts their social media safety as well, because of all of those stressors and what it leads to, and not understanding social media, because why would you? You're trying to put food on the table. It's a whole thing.
That's certainly something that kids often feel. But we know that those economic stressors can also impact a child's food. You know, we know food insecurity is a big issue, like in America right now, which is one of the reasons why schools are so critical. So when those stressors are increased, the mental health of children and parents is a greater risk. And that's why it's so important as we think about mental health to recognize that it is deeply tied to the basic supports that we provide family. You know, I say this as, you know, as a child of immigrants who came to this country with a fierce belief, like in the power and the promise of America, and who still have that, that we are a country where no child should have to go hungry, where people should not have to worry about their ability to feed their family. It's not to say that people shouldn't be working hard, that they shouldn't be contributing to society. Absolutely. But we have enough as a country that we should be able to ensure that
I'm going
about
to
what we
see
buy
if
in
he
the
talks
store
about social
because
media again.
we have healthcare. They have that isolation of knowing viscerally how painful that was. And I can still feel that. You know, I'm older now. I'm in a much better place. I'm blessed with family and with friends, and I'm so grateful every day.
It's the key solutions that you see to tackling this youth mental health crisis in the United States.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would say that number one, when it comes to expanding access to treatment, that we have to utilize technology more effectively to get care to where people are. And that means not just in schools, but in rural areas and all parts of our country where access is a problem. Along those lines, we have to train more mental health providers, not just psychiatrists, psychologists, and counselors, but we have to support peer support groups and other.
There's also like social media pages too. Like if you want that type of information on your child's feed and you think that they'd be interested in it. So mental health in terms of not from organizations that are doing like content, because typically they don't know how to do engaging content, unfortunately, but from people who are using like mental health resources, or even like therapists going on TikTok or social media to talk about things. Of course, you have to look at their credentials to see. YouTube does have a feature now where you can see someone's credentials if they're talking about mental health. So Dr. Patrice Berry, who was in the chat earlier, she has a little label on her YouTube channel saying that she's a licensed therapist. And so she had to show papers, official papers to YouTube to verify that she knows what she's talking about, and she's actually an expert in this topic. And so I don't believe TikTok or Instagram has that feature yet, but it is really helpful that more therapists and people who are experts in the mental health field are coming on social media. There's a lot of even like people who are not experts in this, but they're like content creators or people who talk about mental health or changing your mindset about something. There is this woman that I follow online, and I'm going to try to find her page. I'm going to scroll through this like interview to make sure we're still on topic, because I don't want to go too deep into the issues that he's talking about, because the live stream is talking about is the social media harming your children on, what is it? What did I name it? Oh, it's social media hurting teens on social. It's social media hurting teens' mental health. That's what we're talking about. So I don't go too deep into what he's talking about. But there's this woman that I follow who I really, really enjoy her content, and she's not a mental health expert. However, she is actually now working with Harvard on a mental health program because her content has been so so helpful for so many people and resonated with so many on changing your mindset about your life and helping you go through certain mental health issues that you may be going through. So I'm going to leave her Instagram account, I believe. Yeah, I'm going to find her Instagram account. I'm going to leave it in the comments. But that is a type of social media account that I recommend you follow and look along with it, not look along with it, but follow along her content. And if you find something that's helpful, that unlocks something in you that you think, oh my God, my teen would actually understand this or really enjoy it, then you can send the video along with them. Hopefully they watch it, or you can watch it with them to make sure they watch it, whatever works for you.
That sense of community and connection. I think about programs like the Beyond Differences program that started right in Marin, not too far from where you are.
By my friends,
yes,
absolutely.
By your friends, by Laura and Ace.
And Ace, yeah.
And how that spread to community schools all across the country right now. That's a program that's helping young people help other young people to address isolation and build bridges to one another. So these are some of the areas where I think we could make an extraordinary difference. Some of them require policies to be passed. Some of them require investments to be made. But some of them also require each of us. Those are great uses of technology. But we also know that when technology is not designed well, or when it's designed for purposes other than enhancing mental health and well-being, that it can actually harm us.
Listen to this part, and then I will give Samantha is her name, the one who I mentioned. I'm going to give her Instagram, and then we're going to wrap up.
Designed to pull more and more of our time and attention away, regardless of how well that time and attention is used, that's problematic. If it's designed in ways that force us to compare ourselves to other people, that end up making us feel worse about ourselves, and they may end up making young girls feel worse about their bodies. That is problematic, and that is unfortunately what's happening to many young people right now. So I do think that technology ultimately is a tool, but it's a tool that has to be used well and thoughtfully, and the intentions have to be clear. I would love to see social media platforms that are designed with the intent of maximizing not just time spent on the platforms, but time well spent.
Yeah,
time well spent,
it's interesting.
Meaning time that contributes to positive mental health and well-being and a stronger sense of self. Right? That's what we've got to do, is be conscious and thoughtful about how we use technology. Otherwise, the technology will harm us in ways, even if it wasn't intended, are still profoundly consequential to young people and to families.
Do you look at it as social media as a cause of the mental health crisis or a contributing factor? Sometimes doctors and researchers are careful about the way they frame stuff like that.
Well, I think that there are a number of factors, Jim, that have contributed to the youth mental health crisis today. I don't think it's one single thing.
Right. Agreed.
I do think that for many young people, social media has been one of those contributors. Correct. And has had a negative impact on their mental health and well-being. I think there are other factors as well. The negative information environment in which young people are growing up in, the online bullying and harassment that many are subject to, the violence in communities, racism, the climate change, and threat of climate change that young people are looking at. Those existential threats make them worry that the future is not necessarily brighter than the past.
Yes.
And also the loneliness that young people are struggling with today, which is, not just a consequence of social media usage, but if you think about it, we have fewer and fewer reasons that we need to go out and interact with people these days. Yeah. I can buy all my groceries, from my house. I don't necessarily need to go out to necessarily get mail delivered. I don't need to go out to get, items from the store. I can just order them online. I just have fewer reasons that I need to engage with other people, which might seem convenient. But I worry at times that we've made a devil's bargain and traded convenience and community. And that trade-off is not necessarily one I think that has always borne out in our favor. So you put all these factors together, and it culminates in a profound crisis for young people. And one last thing to mention when it comes to these factors is the pace of change. It is true that every generation has had to deal with change. Yes, that's for sure. But the pace of change and the amount, of change that we're asking young people to think about and accommodate in their lives is really dizzying and unprecedented. So I think we have to look at that thoughtfully and recognize that young people are facing a unique set of factors that are driving the mental health crisis that we're seeing. We may not always understand all of those factors if we didn't grow up with them, but I think it's important for us to approach them with empathy and to listen to young people, to give them a seat at the table when it comes to fashioning solutions. Because one of the many things that makes me hopeful, in addition to having a moment in time where so many people are focused on mental health, where we have bipartisan interest in advancing mental health policies, but what really gives me hope is that young people have a remarkable amount of insight into what's happening and to what they need. They just need our support in actually meeting those needs. But they are profoundly thoughtful, insightful, and are already providing invaluable leadership when it comes to addressing the youth mental health crisis.
That is one of the most interesting conversations I can recall having. And quite frankly, your wisdom, but also the constructive solutions you're talking about in the context of the youth mental health crisis in this country could not be more important for me as a parent, for all of us as parents and community members, and quite frankly, for the United States of America. Thank you.
So there's an organization that is run by teens called the Log Off Movement. They said they were a teen-led organization whose goals is to encourage dialogue about social media and promote healthy use. We are not anti-social media. There are so many organizations, not just the Log Off Movement, but there are other organizations run by youths that are talking about social media safety and the mental health crisis and how to make sure that you're using social media in a healthy way. All we're doing here is making sure we're using social media in the most healthy way possible. So you can scroll through their timeline. They have a bunch of amazing things that they're doing over here. And they're helping teens understand how to use this in a way that's right for them. They're a part of the RT Youth Power. There's like a couple of organizations that were invested in for responsible tech. I'm trying to see if they have a list of the organizations here. They have 15 founders. I'm trying to figure out where the information is. But there are so many organizations that are being funded when it comes to this topic. So it's not that you're alone in this. It's not that social media is bad or good. It's just a tool, and a tool can be used for good. It can be used for bad. And so even though the title is social media hurting teens' mental health, I finally got it right. It's less about is it hurting or helping, and more about how can we give teens and children, and most importantly ourselves, a way to positively use social media. Not just positive like, oh, sunshines, rainbows, wear pink, smile, laugh, or whatever, but just something that ultimately is healthy for you. The net value of it is positive in your life. It inspires you, it moves you, it connects you to yourself with other people, to other people as well, because social media is not going away. And so instead of being scared of social media, we have to lean in and embrace it as much as possible. It does not mean if your child is begging for social media at 10 years old that you have to give it to them. Wait until you believe that they're mature enough, they're responsible enough, they can handle it. Social media is a can of worms. It's never ending. It's a whole thing. So you do not have to immediately give it. There is no should your child join social media unless your child is like a business owner and you really want them to be able to grow their business or community. I did a live stream, again, like I said, with Dr. Patrice Berry around this topic, and I'm going to put the link in the comments because I think it's really, really important discussion, and you can listen to it for more understanding around protecting your child's mental health on social media. And so like highly recommend that you check that out. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Let me know in the comments if you had any unlocks, anything you want us to talk about more, like if there's a particular topic that you want me to cover and for us to chat about, please let me know about it. Subscribe to this channel if you're a parent looking to protect your kids online. And thank you so much for being here. Until next time. Bye.